think there was... What? I found him! Look everywhere! No. Empty. Of course.
Bye, I guess. What?
Could make folks pay for that view.
I have a feeling that wasn't intended. Due to the incredible open-ended level design and the freedom of Styx's moveset, I was motivated to find sequence breaks and unintended pathways, just to sate my own curiosity if anything else. I genuinely think Styx Blades of Greed is amazing, and while it has some drawbacks, they don't bother me enough to bog down the game. Well, except performance issues, but it's modern PC gaming, it kinda comes with the territory. The worst thing I experienced was a specific crash that was eventually patched, and then I'd never experience crashes ever again. Anyway, let me talk about my experience with Styx Blades of Greed. Also, spoilers, I guess. There's a couple of things you should know about how I played this game. I do not use objective markers if I can help it, and the game lets me do that. It's partly to see how playable the game is without them, but also because I enjoy discovering things on my own organically through just exploring the levels. I'm usually pretty thorough, so I stumble upon the objectives eventually. I used pen and paper to write down things of interest, and would refer back to that if I ever got stuck. Essentially, making my own quest log, or tracker. When the game just points me where to go, I don't find that very engaging, so that's why I prefer to not use it. Let me just say, the map, which is only available on the Zeppelin and the various wharfs you find, show you the general area each quartz is found in. And I think not having the map available at all times is such a good design decision. It forces the player to get their bearings and familiarize themselves with each location. Anyway, the downside of being without objective markers is that the game doesn't track anything for you unless you interact with the quartz compass. They introduce it to you after the prologue, and I'm happy to say it's pretty much optional. You can flip it open to show the general location of quartz, and sync with one of them to obtain a quest tracker for that quartz. And the quest tracker itself only shows up when the compass is open, so it's not on your screen 24/7, which I think is great. That being said, there's a few hiccups with the system. After you sync with a quartz shard, a line forms between Styx and the shard telling you exactly where it is at all times. Additionally, there's blue particles floating in the direction of the quartz as well, and I thought the combination was a bit distracting. You're allowed to desync from the quartz, but it doesn't remove any of the previously mentioned effects. I tried playing with everything on, and it just feels a bit overwhelming having so many layers of objective markers. The map, the compass, the objective markers, the blue particles. Heck, if you look around the area, you'll clearly see where a piece of quartz is as well, using context clues, which I appreciate, by the way. Anyway, rant over. I understand it is to accommodate every type of player, so I won't harp on it any longer. While the map does have major locations named, minor ones are not included. So when I eavesdropped on guards for hints on what to do or where to go, sometimes I had no idea where they were referring to. And not because I'm not exploring, I am very thorough when I go through these areas. Let's take the workers lift for example. In one of the early missions, you need to go find a missing lever for one of the switches. Wagon building? Bottom floor? I know I'm playing without objective markers, but like... Huh?
New lever on the counter. Wagon building. Ground floor. Behind the grid. Okay. Wow. Wagon building? Someone skipped vocabulary day. Okay, let's grab that damn lever.
In my original playthrough, I hadn't learned that levers are always in the same area as they're needed, so I went off somewhere else to look. Then was frustrated, so I turned on objective markers, and then I found the lever. And this was not an isolated incident. This happened most frequently at the wall, because most of the architecture looks very samey. Everything is wood, and there's workers and merchants everywhere. So that's one part. The other part is just me having issues with short-term memory due to ADHD. Also, audio processing issues. I know, this isn't even a knock on the game, but I'm detailing my experience with this game, so you're getting all of it. Sometimes I just miss or forget important dialogue, making it difficult for me to figure out where to go or what to do. But you have a pen and paper, didn't you write it down? Bold of you to assume the information would stay in my brain long enough to make it to paper. Sometimes I would successfully record information, other times I wouldn't. Majority of the time, what I was supposed to do was intuitive enough. If the switch was missing a lever, it was rarely far away. There are other times, like the Inquisition Zeppelin mission in the garrison where you need 3 keys for the cage, where I stumbled upon 2 of the 3 keys I needed just by exploring, and then I'd find the last key by listening to the conversation. Styx saying he doesn't know what the keys are for really sold the mission for me. That was really fun.
Must be here for a reason.
Okay, I think you had a pretty good look at how I played the game, so let's get into the really fun stuff. Cyanide Studio. If you watch this video by any chance, I beg of you to not patch out any of the cool things I'm about to show. At the end of Act 1, you gain access to the grappling hook, and saying that the game opens up for you would be the understatement of the year. Scaling the garrison is probably my favorite set piece. The sheer verticality of it, popping in and out of each room, occasionally looking out the windows to see that you're higher up than you were before, until you reach the top. I vividly remember getting to the very top of the garrison first time, taking in the view, and thinking, wow. Just wow. Everywhere I looked, I knew I would eventually get to, and that excited me so much. And then I started wondering how much I could actually explore with my limited moveset. More than you think, curiosity got the best of me. If you grapple to a pole near the prison area and scale the wall using a wall climb and some tricky jumps, you can get on top. Thing is, you're not supposed to be up here yet. And as a rule of thumb, if you sequence break into an area early, it won't be populated with enemies and items for you to find. Most of the time, anyway. This way, you can get into the Inquisition Cathedral and unlock the wharf for later use. I couldn't find a way out of there immediately, so I had to get creative. Ended up getting the sewer wharf as a bonus. Which, by the way, I tried getting to without the grappling hook, but I was not able to. In my original playthrough, I was able to climb all the way up to the nobles' quarters. But in a recent patch, they closed the grid here, so I couldn't progress any further. For a second I was miffed, but then I started brainstorming other ways to get in. So we're back at the garrison, my old friend. There is a suspicious lip poking out of this building, and I was determined to get to it. After half an hour of experimenting with jumps, I finally got on top of the roof. From there, I could just carefully climb down, pull the lever, and make it over to the noble's quarter, no problem. Even though there is nothing of note to find, their wharf is still guarded by some enemies that you have to take out. And now I had an easy way to get to the Noble's Quarter later in the game. Wahoo! Oh yeah, before we move on from the wall, I was able to get on top of the dungeon because wall spikes are just a suggestion. In the later acts you can find materials here, but otherwise, it's very empty. The ruins of Akinaj was probably the area that incited most excitement from me. In a I get to explore all that kind of way. When you get to Grappling Hook, the whole area is open to you. No, I'm not kidding, you can go literally anywhere. This is my favorite area in the game for that reason. It's just a playground where you can go balls to the walls if you know how. There was just so many things I was curious about, and the game delivered every single time. In Act 2, there's only one strike to get, and it involves going to the Broken Belfry. You can go quite off the beaten path if you like. There's nothing to find, just sightseeing. Once you get to the Dark Elf base, you need to go further up to obtain the key to the Quartz Cage. You could do that, or you could get distracted like I did. Going up this little shaft, onto the brazier, and further along the wall, I wanted to see how far I could go. For starters, I got to the Embassy Wharf, took out the goblins and unlocked it for later use. I went to the area below the World Tree and was pleasantly surprised to find that the blueprint was already there. Bonus, I guess. The library is also supposed to be off limits. From the Embassy Wharf, you can get on top of the roof, then continue climbing onto this pillar until you reach the top. And from here you can drop into the library area. There's surprisingly a few EXP pouches to find, but the wharf itself is not available currently. At the time it made no sense to me because there's no enemies. Turns out there will be a boss here later, and considering she can take pot shots at you when you're in sight, I can see why they didn't want you to use this prematurely. With nothing else to do, I reloaded my save and took the ride back to the Belfry Wharf, and as you know, the rest is history. In my most recent Blades of Greed playthrough, I tried to do a ghost challenge, where the goal is to never get spotted, and you can't remove enemies. The former is definitely possible. The latter, not so much. You're unfortunately forced to kill in the prologue, and it cannot be avoided. Every wharf you come across requires you to dispatch all enemies, so it is what it is. So then, the challenge became to avoid detection while interacting with enemies as little as possible. I should also mention I was playing on Goblin mode, so I couldn't just slam the reload button whenever I got spotted. Progress could be lost, so I'd just escape the premises. The game still quick saves for you after certain actions, so I had to plan around those to the best of my ability. And honestly, I think it might be the most engaging way to play. It's much faster paced because you're avoiding enemies, and since you're not removing them, you always have to be on your toes. Distracting enemies I thought was fine, as long as they didn't see me. That includes clones, as I had to rely on them to interact with levers and enemies. I totally expected this to be a bust, but no, you can complete most missions without alerting anyone at all.
Can't believe the orcs really have no gold.
Yeah, what are we supposed to loot? The furniture?
Overall, Styx Blaze of Greed very much feels like a game made for me. It caters to my specific tastes and is therefore made that much more enjoyable. With the way I played it, I was reminded of the Thief games of old, where stealth is the way to play and not an option, where being spotted has consequences because you're frail, and the levels are sprawling and open-ended with many ins and outs of every building. I'm still playing Thief 1 and 2 to this day because of the sheer amount of fan missions that I've accumulated over time. No, I'm not obsessed. What are you talking about? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this passionate ramble, and I hope you have a nice day.